A friend of the show, he is back. Mr. Taj Jackson is back on the podcast. How you doing today, family?
I'm doing good. Doing good. As I said, I'm huge fan of you guys. Learned a lot from you, so happy to be on.
Honor, man. We said that the first time we spoke to you, probably about last year sometime, but even before that, I don't even remember. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And we're going to say that now, man. Salute. So let's just get right into it. We see some breaking news coming out of the estate of your uncle, Micheal Jackson. Now, yesterday, it's being reported that an appeals court handed a victory to the estate of Micheal Jackson in its battle over the 2019 HBO documentary, Leaving Neverland, for the people who don't know, which accused MJ of abusing two boys. The Jackson estate sued HBO for $100 million, arguing that the documentary violated a 27-year-old non-disparaging clause from the 1992 concert film From the Dangerous Tour. Now, I'm just reading this. This is courtesy of Variety. But now, so we got Micheal Jackson's nephew on the platform. Obviously, you have been in your late uncle's corner since the very beginning, since this Leaving Neverland movie, whatever you want to call it, has been laid out on the HBO. How do you feel about what you heard yesterday? And can you update anybody or can you update our people on anything that you may know that the people may not?
Yeah, of course. And I apologize if I'm out of breath. I just ran up the stairs and I'm not in the best shape right now. So if I'm huffing and puffing, that's why. But basically what happened was once Leaving Neverland came out, the documentary, our family, once we heard about it, pleaded with HBO and a bunch of other people not to release it, called it, pointed out a lot of the, fake stuff about it already without even having seen it. We already had heard some stuff that from the people that had seen it at Sundance. And so we kind of wanted to give them the heads up, like, hey, you're HBO. We want you to know that your brand's on the line and this documentary is not something you should put your name to. Mm-hmm. And they basically gave us the big middle finger. So what ended up happening was that they released it, huge marketing push behind it and that. And unfortunately, since my uncle has passed, there's nothing to protect him. There's no slander laws, no libel laws. So what ends up happening is that people can print and say whatever they want once someone's dead. And so the Micheal Jackson estate had no recourse. Our family had no recourse in terms of how to hold them accountable. And so the estate basically found this loophole in terms of a show that my uncle did, a special, I should say, on HBO. On HBO that basically had a non-disparaging clause in it. And it didn't have an ending date to it. Basically, it said you are not allowed to, talk about Michael's private life, period, in general, in that way, in personal life of Micheal Jackson. And so this whole thing was about the argument of that, because this was kind of the loophole that allowed the estate to hold HBO accountable. Mm-hmm. And what it does is that by winning this appeal, or by the HBO losing the appeal, which is really what happened because they had appealed twice, I think, and lost both of them, is that now it can go into a public, we're hoping for a public arbitrator. They probably want a private one because they want to keep things under wrap, but the estate wants it to be public. They want everyone to know what's behind Leaving Neverland, what the lies are of Leaving Neverland. And HBO is trying to keep it quiet. They're basically trying to hide the information. They want it sealed. They want documents sealed. And so that's basically the gist of it in terms of that's our way in terms of holding HBO and Dan Reed and all these other people accountable, because we know it was basically, I would say, hit piece in terms of that. It was which blinded us. And so I think that's kind of our take on it. This isn't by any means, the estate won and now they're going to collect $100 million. This basically says that it can go to an arbitrator that can decide what's right and what's wrong in that way. So that's basic. It's a huge win because they could have thrown it out and said there's no means to, the estate has no means to do this in that way. And so it's a great victory for us in that way.
So what does the $100 million come from? Is that like the profit of the movie, or what does that number come? Is that up to what you guys can get, or how does that work?
I think that was just a number that the estate threw out in the earlier times, basically to let them know that they were serious about this. This is a legend's reputation on the line in a way. And because you got to also remember when the estate sued originally, it hadn't been released everywhere yet. And so there was still time for HBO to do the right thing at certain times. I mean, I think it's still on HBO, to be honest with you. And so they're kind of doubling and tripling down. So I hope they get what they deserve in that way. They've had enough time, and they have enough problems with other things that HBO Max is doing now in that. But yeah, they're getting exposed in that way. So, but yeah, it's just, I think it was just a number, and that was picked in that way, 100 million.
You know, we spoke during the time that Leaving Neverland was either set to release or already released. And obviously a lot of negative conversation was going on about your uncle. We talked about it here on the podcast. How has life been after? Because now we've had people that have came out and said, no, a lot of that, what you've seen on that movie is nonsense. It seems like a lot of the smoke has kind of settled a little bit when it comes to Leaving Neverland. And then we see this pop up with the case kind of being going more towards in your guys' favor against HBO. And it kind of just brings back the feelings of what we had to go through last year. How has life been for you guys since the release of that movie?
Well, when the movie was released, it was pure hell. I mean, to be blunt with, it was just because we didn't know what was said, where it was coming from. We knew the two people involved, James and Wade, but we didn't know what they said. They wouldn't, HBO or anyone else wouldn't give us a copy of it to see ahead of time what we were dealing with. Even though they were giving it to journalists everywhere, they would not give it to us. And so we were blindsided, as I said earlier. And so I think that feeling of being helpless in a way, and then it's platforms like, and I'm not just kissing up to you guys, but it was platforms like you guys that lend a hand to myself to get the word out. And I think that made the difference. Is just, I did a lot of interviews and I did a lot of speaking, and like, wait, hold up, don't listen to what the media is trying to feed to you. Listen to the truth. Do your own homework. Do your own research. And I think us as Black people, we're kind of used to that now. We all know someone that's been railroaded in some way, either by the media or by the higher ups in that way. And I think we have that non-trust feeling anyway. And so it was just kind of letting people know, like, just because we're Jacksons doesn't mean we get preferential treatment in terms of that we have sometimes a bigger target on our back, which is even to this day, like with the news that came out, they tried to spin it as if the estate was trying to get this case to be private, behind closed doors, which is completely opposite of what the estate filed for. Mm-hmm. And so even then, people like Sky News and Variety, which are two big networks / publications, they're spouting false news in that way. But it's happened for my uncle's whole life, pretty much, like in that way. So it's nothing new, but these lies add up, and people repeat the lies. And so that's the frustration part about it in that way.
Why do you think HBO, being as though they had a relationship with your uncle at some point, why would they, in your opinion, even go to the length of putting this slanderous documentary out, in your opinion?
I think it's the same reason why Oprah did, because they already had gotten everything they wanted out of Micheal Jackson. When HBO released the concert, it was the biggest ratings they had gotten at that point. So once my uncle fulfilled what he had to do in that way, there was no need for him anymore. And it's the same thing with Oprah. He delivered Oprah the biggest rating she's ever gotten. And I think it's the biggest interview ever. I forgot. I think it was 91 million people saw it. And so, and it put her on a global map. She was known here, but she was not known worldwide. So, but once she got what she wanted out of it, then you're collateral damage. And I think that's the thing with, instead of giving us that respect and saying, hold up, we have a relationship with this family, let's give them a heads up, or let's talk to them first. They just did what they did. And they were all in, I don't want to say cahoots, but they all were in agreement to do that to our family.
Man, we were talking yesterday, and toward the end of the conversation about the lawsuit, joked about even in death, Michael smacking him around. Like he's still like
karma.
Not get him, no matter how bad they tried to slander, no matter how bad they tried to take that man's legacy away, they never could. Do you think ultimately, even though you guys go through so much and you still endure a lot of the pain that your uncle had to endure, do you think anything could destroy that man's legacy?
You know, it's so interesting because I feel like he was the most famous person at that time in the world, and everything was documented. He almost had no privacy, but in a way, that is what's, I don't want to say saving his reputation, but there's, you know, pretty much his whole life is accounted for. It's like he was never really alone in that terms. People knew where he was at all times and stuff like that. And so dates don't add up. You know, there's train stations that don't exist that they say that exist at the time. So it's just, I think that's been the saving grace, is that you can actually research and realize that all these lies. I mean, this is a man that had off and on for 10 years, FBI, you know, people looking into him. You know, I don't know anyone that for 10 years secretly, you know, the FBI is looking into them here and there, where they're not going to find something on this man in that way. You know, especially with the amount of employees that he has, the huge vastness of Neverland in general. You know, they were looking for anything, and they would have put him away for anything. I mean, that the way they raided that ranch was almost like a drug bust. It was almost like a cartel, like they were taking down some foreign cartel person. They had helicopters, they had cameras everywhere, and so it was set up that way. And then so he went through hell and back, and I think that his fans have been on this journey. There's some of the not only smartest people, but advocates for justice, I would say, and they know everything about the case. They know, you know, page numbers. They know years, dates, everything. They kind of help me out as in the same term, but you can't put. They call Michael Jackson fans like loony or advocates. No, these people have studied the cases. Mm-hmm. They've understood what's at stake. They know it backwards and forwards. They're not blindly following someone. What they're doing is they're advocates for justice. And so I'm so appreciative of the fans and in general, because they've kept me going in that way. Because without the fans, I'd be just yelling in the wind, basically.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. And my last question will be, I know we got a limited amount of time, will be to the people who are doubting, you know, Michael Jackson, your nephew, could you tell us who Michael Jackson was to you, for all the people who are doubting?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because I'm old enough in a way, and also removed enough at certain times to understand why certain people feel the way they do, because that was the way the media portrayed him for 20, 30 years. In that way, it's almost like if you have a friend, and through that friend you hear about this other person that you've never met, but you hear all these bad stories about him, and then you run into him later and you're like, oh, he wasn't that bad, he wasn't, you know, anything what my friend had said he was. Well, the media is what did that to these people. And so I think there's just so many misconceptions about Michael Jackson. But for me, he was, and to people that have avidly defended him, which is completely different than all these other cases that people want to throw and lump him into. He has people that are defending him, people that worked with him, people that ex-employees, obviously family members, but even friends. All these people are defending him. They're standing behind him. And I think that's the difference, is because they know his true heart and they know him, and they've been around the other people that have accused him, and they know their true heart and they know them. And so I think for me in general, my uncle was just, I always like listening to like what people like Akon or Babyface would say, because, you know, it would be a different experience. You know, the Babyface story about him asking Halle Berry, you know, asking for Halle Berry's phone number was something that I always loved, because that's something that I knew he had a crush on her back then, but I never knew that story about him asking someone, you know, for the phone number. That's kind of, you know, right up in there. Like, and then there's footage, I guess, when he met her and he's talking to all these other people, and he sees Holly Berry out of the corner of his eye, and he makes a beeline right for her. Like, he actually stops talking to those people, and it's the funniest thing I've seen, because it was like, I'm going to take my chance to make sure she knows who I am in that way. And it's just who my uncle was. Pure joy, pure fun. I know I'm family, so people are going to be like, oh, well, he's supposed to say that. No, I wouldn't put my reputation on the line, first of all, to do that. Like, I'm not going to defend someone that I think has done something wrong. Anyone that knows me knows that. But by the same token, I think that it's someone that, and I understand it because he understood it. When how do I say this? I can say it. When you're Black and you're doing great things, you become a threat to certain people in that way. And he knew that. And he knew that he was going to break glass ceilings. He knew he was going to do certain things that other people couldn't do. And instead of beating him fair and square, they cheated. They tried to tear his legacy down. They're still trying to tear his legacy down. They're still trying to call other people the king of pop. They're still trying to beat him any way they can, and as opposed to beat him on his records and beat him on his music in that way. And so they're cheating, basically. And so I would just say, just do your homework. Like, just take the time. If you ever did watch Leaving Neverland, you gave 4 hours of your life to watch that, give 20, 30 minutes to learn the truth. It's out there. It's completely out there. And it's backed by facts and court documents, as opposed to Leaving Neverland, which is backed up by hearsay of two people that are suing the estate for money.
Yeah. Definitely appreciate your perspective. Appreciate your time. Let the people know.
I don't want to sound angry or anything. I'm not. I'm actually. This has been a great year.
Yeah.
The karma train has been making a bunch of stops here and there. Which is I mean, I don't want to call people out, but it's been making a bunch of stops. But I do think there's something about. I saw it with Kobe Bryant in that way, in terms of, when you've done such great things, they can't wait to tear down that legacy.
Yep.
And the problem they have with Kobe is they jump too early. People were still feeling hurt. And so they jumped too early. If they would have given it 5-10 years, they would have done the same thing to Kobe Bryant, and Snoop had to jump in there and set them straight. And look what they did to Snoop. So I don't like any of that stuff. I really don't. I see it a mile away. And it frustrates me. It really does, because they have us sometimes fighting within each other, in that way, instead of, and they're throwing stuff to instigate it in that way, and so but I can see things from a different perspective. That's the only thing.
Great point. Well, and we can go down a rabbit hole with that one, boy. You brought up.
I know, but I mean, as I said, and I'm thankful for channels like you and podcasts like you that basically will hear the other side and give that opportunity. Because myself and Brandy, my cousin Brandy, trust me, we went to a bunch of other networks and stuff like that, and they shut us down completely in that way. They didn't want to know the truth.
You always have an open door here. You know that. Anytime I text, you text, I'm glad that you text right back. And it's always love, man, over here at the podcast. Let the people know where they can find you, what you have going on now, because we were texting yesterday and you busier than we are, man. You got a lot going on. Let the people know where they can find you, man, definitely.
I think it's it's Taj Jackson 3 is my Twitter, I think. I'm on that all the time in that way. I have an Instagram, but I don't even use it, though. I have a project that I'm working on, which is for my uncle in that way, but that's down the line with COVID and everything like that. The COVID-19, I've basically put that on hiatus until things get better for the production aspect of that. But that's pretty much it.
Got you. Well, definitely, Taj. Appreciate your time. Appreciate your insight on this situation. We will keep you guys updated as well as we know on the case. And thank you very much talking on and off camera to us, brother. We thank you.
Thank you guys for the opportunity.